Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Maaike, welcome to my hobby channel Floating in Dreams, where I like to talk about all things fashion and makeup. Today's video is another installment of my eyeshadow palette extravaganza that I'm doing here throughout the entire month of August, including extra videos on Saturdays. So I hope you'd like to stay tuned for more, as we're going to be chatting today about if I had to get rid of all of my eyeshadow palettes, or somehow lost them, or whatever, which 10 eyeshadow palettes would I keep out of my entire eyeshadow palette collection? And in case you would like to see that beast of a video, then that's gonna be filmed and it's going to be posted towards the end of the month. So you're gonna have to stay tuned to see the full collection. But today we're just going to chat about my top 10 eyeshadow palettes that I feel I would want to keep out of everything I own to be able to do everything that I would like to do. So let's get started. So yeah, we are here today to chat about my 10 palettes that I think I would really need to keep around to do different looks with. I definitely have a type, okay? Okay, I know I have a type. And there are definitely, I think, a couple of changes here compared to what I've done previously. I've done eyeshadow videos. I've done videos in the past where I've talked about my favorite eyeshadow palettes. That's not what this video is about. This is not my top 10 favorite all-time eyeshadow palettes, though there is a little bit of overlap with that kind of video for sure. What this mainly is if I somehow lost all of my palettes, if there were 10 palettes that I had to keep that I could then still do everything with, which would be the 10 that I would want to repurchase or make sure I kept at all times. So there are a couple of things that I like to do in terms of eyeshadows, and I think that's good to start off with before I actually get to the palette. So for me, I like cool tone neutrals. So we're gonna have some cool tone palettes in here, that's for sure. So that's like my favorite sort of like go-to everything, everyday sort of look. I like quite a bit of neutral eyeshadow actually. That's like my favorite thing. Plus, in terms of formulations, I am someone who just loves blendable, buildable, perhaps a touch more on the sheer side eyeshadows, rather than shadows that go on, boom, pigment, and that you then need to blend out very carefully with like a small brush to make sure it diffuses. I just like to be, the way things work for me, and in my day-to-day life, I just prefer something that's perhaps a little bit more buildable, a bit more wearable, rather than what you see most people recommend here on YouTube. And also if you follow any people who do makeup on Instagram, a lot of people tend to prefer these very intensely pigmented eyeshadows. But listen, this girl here is an English teacher. So in my day-to-day life, I tend to just get ready for work a lot. And even though I would wear this kind of look with a green eye and a pink lip to my job, because I just do, yeah? I know some people will probably think, girl, you're crazy. But it's part of my personality, it's part of who I am. Most people don't even know me without like a bright lip or something else on my eyes. Like most people don't. So yeah, it kind of goes with the vibe of what I like to go for. But yeah, that does mean that I need eyeshadows that don't take ages to blend out. I don't have time in the morning to sit down for like 30 minutes to build an eye look. I just don't. I whack something on and it needs to work. Because in case you're familiar with any of the content I do, a lot of what you see, the looks I create, I just create before I head out the door. I've got 5 minutes to do an eye look, max. So are they the most creative? No, I tend to save that for my vacations and sometimes like a weekend, and I'll have like a moment and I'll do something. I can do it for sure. It just, I'm doing other things in my life as well than just makeup, you know? And I'm not a makeup artist. So for me, that all factors into my top 10 eyeshadow palettes that I would select from my collection if I had to get rid of everything and I could only keep 10. So let's get to these eyeshadows. For the OG viewer here, I know you're going to guess this one right, because as I mentioned, there is going to be some overlap with my like top 10 favorites. So there are, till this day, I sound like a broken record now to myself, but till this day, there are 3 eyeshadow palettes that have been my long-standing favorite neutral palettes. Great for every day, if I want to go from day to night. I know how these palettes work. We've been through the ringer. They just, you know, it's like they've become a part of my personality almost. So if you're an OG watcher, then I think you can predict which ones I'm talking about. For those of you who haven't been around, this is the Holy Trinity right here in terms of eyeshadow. If you are like me, you are fair-skinned, you have a cool to neutral undertone, and you like to do makeup for every day, my top 3 recommendations are the Lorac Pro 3, Naked 3, and Naked 2. I do have an alternative for the Urban Decay Naked 2 because that's no longer available, so I will tell you what I would recommend as an option that you could buy into if you're looking for that kind of color story. But let's talk about these 3 quickly and then just move on to the other 7, because if you've been watching me for a long time, you know why I like this one. So this is the Lorac Pro 3. I like this palette because it's incredibly fair toned. Very often until this was released, I just didn't understand why I couldn't make certain eyeshadow palettes work for me that were very much hyped up and raved about by a lot of people in the beauty community. And then I tried this and I was like, oh wait, everything else before this was just too deep for me. So I struggle with a lot of neutral palettes being way too warm toned or just so dark that a lot of the deep shades actually start looking the same when I start blending them. Like everything starts looking like a gray or a brown or a black, and it's supposed to have like a purple undertone. It doesn't show up on me. This was the first palette where I felt I could really use every single shade, and that is why this is still one of my top 10 recommendations when it comes to a great neutral palette for someone like me with a very fair, cool to neutral undertone. This is also a true neutral palette. It's not too warm toned, it's not too cool toned, it's very much smack in the middle. And I know this palette has gotten a lot of critique for some of the shimmers that are in here. Lorac's formula is very soft, very smooth, but it does create quite a bit of fallout. And especially with the shimmers, that can be a bit problematic. The shade Medallion, I would recommend only using with a finger. And yeah, I've just used this a ton. In fact, these are the 3 palettes where I'm like, I'm gonna buy a backup if they are ever discontinued or if I hit pan. And with Lorac, you can hit pan quite easily. And I know that if I really commit to it, I can definitely hit pan in the shade Rose Bronze because that has a huge dent. Lorac Pro 3, everyone. Then my rosy toned option, if that's what you're looking for, I would recommend the Urban Decay Naked 3. Till this day, I think that this is one of the best palettes, I feel, if you want to go for that rosy, taupey kind of look. So it's got pinks, but it's cool toned pinks and it's not too warm, which is why I really like this, again, for my fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone. I really like this shade here called Mugshot. And Urban Decay, of course, just recently came out with a mini of this palette, about 8 years too late. And a lot of people were critiquing them for doing that. But this palette is one of the OG Naked palettes that has still not been discontinued, which I think means that a lot of people who are not part of the beauty community buy this. This is the palette you can give to your grandma, to your auntie, to someone you know who happens to be a lawyer, or people who just need makeup that looks pretty and that's foolproof for every day that you can whack on and you just don't have to worry about it. That's how I would categorize this palette. It's very easy. I know that a lot of people didn't like it because it made them look a little sickly. If you're a more warm-toned leading skin tone, this may not be perfect for you because the pinks in here are quite cool-toned and that can look a bit ashy on you. For me, personally, it's perfect. It's perfection. And I haven't been able to find the mini in store yet. I definitely want to see it first. I will be buying it, but it hasn't been released here yet. I went to store the other day and they didn't have it in yet, because usually what happens is that Urban Decay says on their Instagram that that's when the release date is, and then over here it seems to mean that that's when they start shipping products to different retailers, and it can take 2 to 3 weeks before we actually get the products in store. But yeah, the Naked 3 I think is still a really good palette till this day, and I think I'm the only person on YouTube who still recommends this. But I really like mine, not gonna lie. Naked 2 then, the other part of the Holy Trinity. I still really like this. This is one of my favorite palettes of all time. I've got some dents in here. I think I could hit pan on it. This was discontinued, so I did buy a backup of it on eBay. I think eBay or Amazon. I'm not sure. I bought it off of someone who was getting rid of theirs that had a newer batch coat than this. So it's also a bit more recent. But yeah, this just has the perfect taupe called Suspect. I really like Verve. I like Pistol. YDK, which is like the perfect cool toned rose gold. You get teas. So for me, really like this part of the palette, Snakebite, I love too. Like these shades here. Yeah, I just love it. I don't really like the warmish tones that it has going on here. So for me, I always like say that I like to skip like these first two shades. This is the palette for me. And then taking out the black because I don't love black shadow. But yeah, Naked 2, you can no longer get it. So what do I recommend you can buy instead? Natascha Denona Glam. I just haven't tried this palette as much as the Naked 2. So to me, like the Naked 2 is sort of like my Siamese twin. We're joined by the hip. You know, it's been around, we're best friends. And this is edging in because I really like the quality of the palette. I actually did a video, I think in the early spring, where I actually did a look where I did one eye with the Naked 2 and one eye with this palette. And you can get the same look out of these palettes. There's a lot of overlap in terms of shades. You get a little bit of warmth, you get quite a lot of cool tones, and it also favors shimmers over mattes, which is my personal love. Now I know a lot of people think Natascha Denona is quite expensive. However, over here, this retails somewhere between the 65 to 69 euro mark, which is more expensive than the Urban Decay, but you do get extra shades because you get 15 shades instead of 12. So you get more product. And over here where I live, a naked palette retails for 55 euros. So it's only about 10 to 15 euros more than the Urban Decay one. So you do need to bear that in mind. Plus you get a lot more product. So I would recommend buying into the Natascha Denona Glam palette if the Urban Decay Naked 2 is something you're interested in, but you can buy it. So I would like to round off my neutral section of this palette with two palettes that are some more of my, again, more recent loves. And since we were talking about Natascha Denona, I think I'm going to show you this palette in quite a lot of my videos because the gold palette is one of my favorites. It's just that I didn't like the gold shade, so I replaced it with Dragon Bite that I had in my Lila palette, and I put the gold shade that was in the center of this one in that one. And I like that palette now better too. Because in case you didn't know, these can be popped out, and also the ones in the Glam, you can actually pop them out quite easily, and then you can just rearrange the color story if you so wish. And if you have a couple of the palettes, you can change it around. However, the Glam has smaller pans than this does, so if you have a couple of like different sizes from Natascha Denona, it's not gonna work. But you can customize these, which is another perk. But yeah, the gold was one that I wasn't sure about, and when I used it, I just loved it. This has some really nice tealy greens. A lot of people are going gaga for these like 3 toppery kind of shades. These are really, really, really stunning, very unique, very chromatic toppers that you can use all over the lid. For instance, if you put this shade over the teal, you get a very different look again. But actually, my favorite shade in this palette is Kava, which is a really lovely, again, great toppery kind of shade, but it also works really well as a standalone. And what I just appreciate about this palette is the different undertones and textures you get. I've said it a lot of times, but you get like some things that are a little bit more flaky. They're not like super fallouty, but just a little bit more textured compared to like something like this, and also this gold and this shade here. Those are a bit more like metallic satin leaning, and then you get different like mattes that are all really nice, like they play really well together, and they just really make this palette just stand out, and it's really, really good quality. It is super expensive though, which is why in this scenario that I'm talking about today, I just hope that it's because I had to get rid of all of my other palettes and I could just keep 10 rather than having to go out and buy all 10, because this would definitely add to the expense. Now, another neutral palette that I would want to put in here, and this is quite a recent find. I only tried this about like late 2020. I decided to buy myself Persona's Identity 1 and 2 palette, and the Identity 1 stole my heart. It was so lovely. I totally get the hype now. Like people like Kelly Gooch have been raving about this brand for years, And I was never sure about it because Persona is just a little bit more difficult for me to buy. But they're now doing the Identity one in different packaging. And what actually happened is that now, at least I'm not sure if that's still the case, but when I placed my purchase and I bought both palettes, I got free shipping and I wasn't hit with customs. So it ended up being quite a good deal that way because I just paid for these palettes and that's it. You get the right amount of mattes over here to really make it work. Now, some people have asked me, like, don't you find the transitions to be a little bit too dark? But what I just like to do is that I put this cream, for instance, with this taupey shade, and then I can really blend it out and really sort of customize it. So I really feel that in this palette, the creamy matte that you get actually has a function. Whereas very often I go like, that's the throwaway shade of the palette for me usually. And just like these two shimmers are lovely. You get two cool tones, you get warm tones. You can very easily make this a bit more plummy if you want to. The undertones in this are stunning. And I believe this was formulated to be perfect for people with brown eyes. And I've got brown eyes, so this is a lovely palette for me. I really like the quality, and I think it's definitely something to look into if you were thinking of buying another neutral palette that has really good quality and gives you a lot of versatility. Yeah, that would be the neutral section, like my 5 solid favorites, but I like to play around with a bit of color too. So I did want to also put in 5 palettes here that I think would allow me to do everything that I would want to do in terms of more colorful looks. So before we get to the actual like truly colorful palettes, I was like, one of the colors I really like to wear is purples. And I did a ranking of all of my purple palettes in May, and I actually ranked this as my top pick, which is the Viseart Violette Étendu. And it's fairly neutral because it has half a neutral palette and the half the palette is purples. But these are very sort of like plummy neutrals. They all have a purpley kind of undertone to them, which I really like because we don't have anything else like that in the other palettes. That's all just neutrals. It's taupes, it's browns. It's that sort of neutral, whereas this all has a bit more of a plum undertone. And then you just get these amazingly stunning purpley shades. This right here, I'm not sure if you can see, but it looks bright pink and then it has that blue flash. This matte is amazing. So you can do like a fully like wacky purple look with this, or you can make it more nude, muted. And again, that just goes with my lifestyle and what I need a lot better than these really intense like purple palettes that you see other brands do. This is just more my vibe when it comes to purples. So that's why this would be my pick for a purple palette. But you know that my other sort of favorite shades to wear are greens or blues. Those are some of my favorites as well. And the Ace Beauté Oceanic palette is definitely one that I just love. And it's got blues and greens. So then we've got my 3 major colors that I love to wear just like ticked off. So we've got some purples, we've got the blues, we've got the greens. And so far, this is the first time I've used the Whale Song palette from Menagerie, so I can't say anything about that yet. But so far, out of all of the blue-green palettes that I've tried, the Oceanic from Ace Beauté is simply my favorite. You get some bright pops, you get enough greens, you get enough blues. There's enough variety here. There are enough shimmers that also have a different sort of like depth, different levels of depth. So you get a really nice bright blue shade here, you get a really nice bright green shade here, you get a teal. I love teal. So you just get a really good variety of blues and greens in here, which I feel other blue-green palettes may not have as much. But I will be coming back to you later this month, and I'm going to do a video all about my blue-green palettes because I have 5 of them, and then I'm going to tell you which one I think is my favorite. So you're going to have to wait for my full thoughts till I do that video. But so far, of everything I've tried, this is definitely it for me. It is. Now, sticking to blue-green sort of palettes, and a palette that I don't know why, but if I were to keep just 10 palettes, this is always one that instantly pops into my head, and that's Juvia's Place The Tribe, which has been discontinued, sadly. But this, like, these 3, and then these 2, because these 2 are duochromes. And can I do this sort of look with the Ace Beauté Oceanic? Probably, but I feel again that this sort of like mustardy browny shade, that it's a brown but it's got a green undertone, means that you can sort of do a neutral look with this and still make it green or teal, or you can go for a full-on like green look if you want to as well. So again, in terms of versatility, and that's what I would be looking for if I were to keep just 10 palettes, I want to be able to do loads of different things. Then this has some shades that really pair well with blues and greens, and just like these two duochromes are life. And I just really, really adore this palette, and it's such a shame it was discontinued. But we're not there yet, because I like myself a grungy color story as well. So you knew we had to bring in the grunge, and one that's been discontinued as well. The Melt Muerte palette, of course, because my favorite grungy look to do is a navy smoky eye, and this has like the 3 perfect shades you need to do a navy smoky eye. It's all in this palette. I like these like plummy wine shades. I think it can really nicely amp up some of the neutrals. This to compare, like if you pair this palette with the gold, I think you can really take it to new heights. You get some like aqua shades that can work really well with the blue-green stuff that I've got going on. So I think this is also a really good complementary palette that can really round it out to really, again, take the eyeshadows into other, like, to take it into a different realm, you could say. So if I want to get more creative, or I want to do something more colorful, then my Melt Muerte can definitely not be left out. And then I think my surprise pick, because it even surprised me, another discontinued palette. I do apologize, but the Club Nebula, which is the Kaleidos and Angelica Nykvist collab, and I figured I was really solid on the first 9 picks, but then for a 10th, I was like, I'm not entirely sure, and then I was like, I would keep this because it's got those like reddish tones and then the plums, and then it's got those like teals but something bright and jewel toned, a bit of grunge but also something neutral. Again, this is just really my vibe, and you get some stunning shimmers in here. And again, I think that, for instance, these shades can play together with the blue greens I have. This can work a little bit more with the purples that I've got going on. And this can, if I then want to do something warm toned, I've got that too, that I can bring in and blend out and play around with. So I think that this is just going to round it out really nicely and just really give me a nice curated 10 palette selection that gives me some more jewel tones, which that wasn't really represented anywhere yet. So this is definitely a pick I think that I would bring in. I am a neutral lover at heart though, so that's why we have quite a lot of neutrals. Like in terms of colorful shades, I think that really you just need like one really good colorful palette, and it's always going to look similar. You know what I mean? That's the way I feel. And when it comes to neutrals, I just feel that neutrals can just, like, depending on your skin tone and your mood, you can make it look a bit more smoky or a little bit more subtle, and maybe you want to go for something rosy or something taupey, and it's always going to look different. So for me, there's more versatility in a neutral than there is in a color, if that makes sense. I'm not sure. That's just the way my brain works. Maybe I'm a bit crazy. But yeah, those are the 10 palettes that I would select for my entire eyeshadow palette collection if I could only keep 10. So leave me a comment down below, or maybe make a video about this yourself if you haven't. If you do have a channel, then I would love to check that out. And then I would really very much like to thank you for watching today's video. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more by me. I usually make 3 videos a week, but currently I'm doing 4 because as part of Eyeshadow Palette Extravaganza, I'm doing an extra upload on Saturdays. So I hope you would like to stay tuned for more, and I hope to see you in my next video. Take care, have a great day, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!